Welcome back to the Deep Dive. I'm your host, and today we are clearing the decks. We are turning off notifications, we are putting the phone on silent because we have a massive topic to cover.
A huge one.
We are tackling a subject that, it defines a generation, maybe even two generations.
It really does. It's good to be back.
It is a story that every single person listening has heard pieces of, but I guarantee you, and I say this with confidence, the full picture is so much messier, so much more complicated, and honestly, so much more tragic than the headlines ever captured.
Oh, absolutely. When we started pulling the source material for this deep dive, we have a huge stack today, I was struck by how O.J. Simpson has become almost a mythic figure.
Yeah.
He's less of a person and more of a Rorschach test for America. For some people, especially older sports fans, he's the greatest running back who ever lived, period.
The duo-tick.
For others, he's that charming guy in the Hertz commercials, running through the airport.
Right, go OJ, go.
And then for a huge portion of the world, he is simply the face of the trial of the century, a symbol of the legal system, race relations, and celebrity culture, all just colliding at once.
Exactly. It's like the timeline of American culture splits right there in 1994. But O.J. Simpson, the man, the actual human being who lived from 1947 to 2024, that's what we are here to explore.
Right.
We are looking at the complete arc of his life based on the comprehensive biographical and legal source material we've pulled. Because he died in April 2024, and that event
Right.
it closed the book on a life that spanned the absolute highest heights of American celebrity and the darkest, most controversial corners of the legal system.
And that's the mission for this deep dive, really. We want to move past the caricature.
Yes.
We need to understand the specific details of his athletic career, which was historic in ways people often forget, and then the granular evidence of the trials and the weird, almost surreal aftermath that followed him right up until his death.
Right. We're going from the housing projects of San Francisco to the trial of the century and then to a prison cell in Nevada for a completely different crime. It is a wild ride.
It is.
So, tone check before we dive in. I'm here as the curious learner who remembers the big beats. I remember where I was when the verdict was read, but I am probably fuzzy on the details.
No, I'll be here to connect those dots because you really can't understand the fall, the sheer magnitude of the tragedy, if you don't understand just how high that pedestal was in the first place.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start at the very beginning. Section 1, the juice. I think people forget that before he was a defendant, he was a god in the sports world. But he didn't start that way, did he?
Not at all. And this is where the source material immediately surprises you. Orenthal James Simpson was born on July 9, 1947, in San Francisco. He grew up in the Potrero Hill neighborhood.
Okay.
Now, if you go to San Francisco today, real estate is astronomical everywhere, but back then, in the late 40s and 50s, this was low-income housing. These were the projects.
So a tough start immediately.
A very tough start. His mother, Eunice, she worked as an orderly in a psychiatric ward. His father, Jimmy Lee Simpson, was a custodian and a cook. But looking at the notes, there is a detail about his father that really complicates the family dynamic, something that wasn't widely discussed during O.J.'s prime because, the cultural conversation just wasn't ready for it.
I saw this in the research. His father was part of the drag scene?
Yes. His father, Jimmy Lee, was a well-known drag queen in the Bay Area. Later in life, he announced he was gay. He actually passed away from AIDS in 1986.
Wow.
But Simpson's parents separated in 1952, when O.J. was just 4 years old, so he was raised primarily by his mother. But you have to imagine the psychological landscape of that home life in the 1950s.
That is a very heavy backdrop for a kid growing up in that era. And physically, O.J. wasn't exactly born an athlete, was he? We think of him as this physical specimen, but the early years tell a totally different story.
No, and this is the Forrest Gump moment of his life. It's incredible. As a child, he suffered from rickets.
Rickets. I feel like that's a Victorian disease, like something you read about in a Charles Dickens novel.
It is, essentially. It's a condition that softens the bones, usually due to a severe vitamin D deficiency or a calcium deficiency. It's really a disease of poverty.
Okay.
And because of the rickets, his legs were bowed. He actually had to wear leg braces until he was 5 years old just to correct his bone structure.
That is wild irony. The guy who becomes famous for running, for having these incredible legs that carry him to the Hall of Fame, started out in braces, unable to walk properly.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And that experience, being the kid in braces in a rough neighborhood, it shapes you. He was teased, He was vulnerable.
Of course.
And typically when you're a vulnerable kid in that environment, you look for protection. You look for a tribe. For Simpson, that was a street gang called the Persian Warriors.
The Persian Warriors. It sounds like a movie game, but this was real life, so he's heading down a bad path.
A very bad path. He was incarcerated briefly at the San Francisco Youth Guidance Center. By his own admission later in life and the accounts of his high school girlfriend, he was heading straight for a life of crime. He was fighting. He was stealing. But then he had this pivotal meeting, a moment that feels like it belongs in a movie script. It's just a 1 in a million chance.
I love this detail. Who did he meet?
Willie Mays.
The baseball legend. The say hey kid.
The absolute legend. After Simpson's third arrest, a counselor at the youth center arranged for him to meet Willie Mays. Mays was a god in San Francisco, and he took the time to talk to this troubled kid.
Wow.
He basically told him to get his act together, that his athletic talent was a gift, and he was wasting it on the streets. According to Simpson, that was the moment that turned the light bulb on. He realized sports were his ticket out.
It's amazing how one conversation, just one person taking an interest, can change a whole trajectory.
It's everything.
So he decides to focus on football. He plays at Galileo High School,
Right.
but he couldn't go straight to a big university because of his grades, right?
Correct. His grades were terrible. He had the talent, but not the transcript. So he had to go to City College of San Francisco first. It's a junior college. And he didn't just play well. He obliterated the competition.
Unnominated.
He broke junior college rushing records left and right. Suddenly, the grades didn't matter as much to the recruiters. Every major university in the country wanted him.
And he chose USC, the University of Southern California.
A match made in heaven. He lands in Los Angeles in 1967. And this is where the legend really begins. In just 2 seasons, 1967 and 1968, he led the nation in rushing both years. He won the Heisman Trophy in 1968.
The Heisman is the biggest award in college sports. It's the top of the mountain. But I want to drill down on how he won it, because sometimes the voting is close, right? It's a nail-biter.
Usually it's a debate. There are regional biases, different opinions. But in 1968, it wasn't a contest, it was coronation. He won the Heisman by the largest margin in history at that time.
By how much?
He defeated the runner-up, Leroy Keyes, by 1,750 points.
1,750 points. That's not a win. That's a statistical anomaly. That's a landslide.
Exactly. Everyone knew he was the best player in the country. Yeah. And there's one play from his college days that stands out. The greatest play.
This is the 1967 game against UCLA, the big rivalry game.
You have to understand the stakes here. This wasn't just a game. It was arguably the biggest game of the 20th century in college football. USC versus UCLA. Crosstown rivals.
Okay.
The winner goes to the Rose Bowl and probably wins the national title. The stadium is packed. The whole country is watching.
And the score is tight.
USC is down in the fourth quarter. It's 3rd down and 7. The quarterback calls a play 23 blast. He hands the ball to Simpson. Simpson finds a little gap, cuts to the sideline, just turns on the Jets.
And he's gone.
64 yards for a touchdown. That run tied the game. The extra point won it. That single play made him a national icon before he even played it down in the NFL.
So he enters the NFL draft in 1969 with all this hype. He goes to the Buffalo Bills, drafted 1st overall. And I think this is where the younger generation might lose the context. They know he was a football player, but I don't think they realize how good he was. They see the mugshot, not the highlight reel.
He wasn't just good. He was transformative. But it took a few years. His first few seasons in Buffalo were actually a struggle. The coach, John Rauch, had O.J. Simpson, the greatest runner in college history, blocking and catching passes rather than running.
What?
It was coaching malpractice.
That's like buying a Ferrari and using it to tow a trailer. Why would you do that?
It baffled everyone. For 3 years, people were starting to whisper that maybe he was a bust, a college phenom who couldn't cut it in the pros.
Oh, wow.
But then the Bills brought in a coach named Lou Saban. Saban looked at the roster and said, I have O.J. Simpson. I am going to give him the ball. And he did. He built the entire offense around Simpson. In 1973, he did the unthinkable.
This is the big stat.
He rushed for 2,003 yards in a single season. He was the first player ever to break the 2,000-yard mark.
And here's where it gets really interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because players have done that since. Eric Dickerson did it. Derrick Henry did it recently. But why is OJ's record different? Why do the football purists still point to 1973?
Because of the math. In 1973, the NFL season was only 14 games long.
Right.
Today, it's 17 games. O.J. Simpson ran for over 2,000 yards in just 14 games.
So his average per game must be insane.
It is. To this day, he holds the record for the highest rushing yards per game average in a season, 143.1 yards per game.
143 yards a game.
Think about that. That's a great game for a modern running back. He was averaging that every single Sunday for a whole season. That record still stands.
That is insane consistency. And he had that nickname, the Juice.
The Juice. It started as a play on O.J. Orange Juice, but it became a metaphor for energy, for electricity, for power, and his offensive line, the guys blocking for him, they leaned into it. They called themselves the Electric Company.
Because they turn on the juice.
It is marketing gold. It's clever, it's fun, it's catchy. And that marketing genius didn't stop at the sideline. This transitions us perfectly to his celebrity off the field, because O.J. wasn't just a football player. He was, as the sources put it, a colorless celebrity.
That's a crucial term here. What does colorless mean in this context in the 70s?
It means he was non-threatening to white America. You have to remember, this is the 1970s. Racial tensions are still very high. Corporate America was terrified of alienating white customers by using black spokespeople. But O.J. was different. He was handsome, articulate, always smiling. He seemed safe. He spoke without slang. He dressed in suits. He transcended race in a way that very few public figures had at that point.
And Hertz saw that potential.
Hertz Rental Car. In 1975, they made him the face of their brand. He was the first black man to be hired for a major corporate national ad campaign.
We've all seen the clips, right? O.J. running through the airport in the three-piece suit, jumping over barriers, people cheering him on.
It was a revolution in advertising. It solved what marketing experts call the vampire video problem.
The vampire video. I love this term. Break it down.
A vampire video is a commercial that is so entertaining or funny that you remember the joke or the celebrity, but you forget the product. The commercial sucks the blood out of the brand.
Got it.
But with O.J., the connection was instant. You saw him running, you thought speed, you thought efficiency, you thought Hertz. Their brand awareness skyrocketed by 40%. Profits increased by 50% in the first year alone.
So he's conquered sports, he's conquered Madison Avenue, and then he conquers Hollywood.
He was everywhere. He was in the Towering Inferno. He was in the acclaimed miniseries Roots, which was a huge cultural moment.
Yes, massive.
And of course, the Naked Gun movies.
As Detective Nordberg,
Yeah.
the guy who's always getting injured.
It's slapstick comedy. He's getting hit with doors, falling off boats, getting his hand trapped in a window. It made him even more lovable. He wasn't the tough guy. He was the goofy, unlucky guy. It just reinforced that image of him as a gentle soul.
And that image, the unthreatening, nice guy, is what makes this next piece of trivia so jarring. The producers of The Terminator.
Oh, this is the ultimate what if. It's just chilling to think about.
They considered O.J. Simpson for the title role. The Terminator, the killing machine from the future.
James Cameron and the producers discussed it seriously. Arnold Schwarzenegger has confirmed this in interviews. They were looking for someone physically imposing, but they ultimately decided against casting O.J. because they thought he was too nice.
Too nice.
They didn't think audiences would believe O.J. Simpson is a remorseless killer.
Man, that ages poorly.
It certainly does. But it shows you just how successfully he had cultivated that persona. The world saw a teddy bear.
So we have this American hero. Success on the field, success in Hollywood, success on Madison Avenue. But underneath all that polish, there was a much darker current flowing. Section 2. We have to talk about his relationships, and specifically Nicole Brown.
This is where the story shifts from a sports biography to a tragedy. And we need to look at his personal life. Simpson was married first to Marguerite Whitley. They had 3 children. But there was a tragedy there, too, which often gets lost in the later noise.
Right, the drowning. That's horrible.
In 1979, their daughter, Erin, drowned in the family pool just before her 2nd birthday.
I can't even imagine that kind of pain.
It's a trauma that stays with you forever. They divorced in 1979, but by then, Simpson had already met Nicole Brown.
She was very young when they met, right?
She was 18. She was working as a waitress at a nightclub called the Daisy in Beverly Hills. O.J. was 30, and he was already a global superstar.
So the power dynamic there is incredibly skewed from the very start.
Massively. He was at the peak of his fame, and she was an 18-year-old kid. They started dating and eventually married in 1985. But the relationship wasn't the fairy tale it looked like in the glossy photos.
No.
Not at all. The source material describes it as fractious and mutually obsessed. It was volatile, and it was violent.
And this wasn't something that just came out at the murder trial. It was documented by the police well before that. This was a known issue.
Yes. The most infamous incident was New Year's Eve, 1989.
Tell us about that night.
Police responded to a 911 call at their home on Rockingham Avenue. They found Nicole hiding in the bushes outside the house.
In the bushes.
She was wearing only a bra and sweatpants. She was bruised, beaten, and absolutely terrified. She told the officers explicitly, "He's going to kill me."
He's going to kill me. In 1989, 5 years before she actually died.
Yes. Simpson fled the scene in his car before he could be arrested. Later, he pleaded no contest to spousal abuse.
Now, for the listeners who aren't lawyers, no contest is basically the same as a guilty plea for sentencing purposes, isn't it?
Exactly. It means I am not admitting guilt, but I am not fighting the charges because the evidence is overwhelming. It goes on your record as a conviction.
So he has a record of spousal abuse. Did he lose his Hertz contract? Did NBC fire him? Did he become a pariah?
No. And that is the shocking part. He essentially got a slap on the wrist, he got some community service, a small fine, and was allowed to do his counseling over the phone.
Over the phone.
Over the phone. He kept his contracts, he kept his status. It really highlights the domestic violence just wasn't treated with the severity it is today. It was seen as a private family matter.
And that 1989 incident was just the tip of the iceberg.
It was. Prosecutors later compiled evidence of 62 separate incidents of abusive behavior.
62.
62. Stalking, harassment, public humiliation, physical violence. It was a pattern of control and terror.
They finally broke up for good in May 1994, and the source material quotes Nicole telling friends something chilling.
She told her friends, "He's going to kill me and he's going to get away with it."
She predicted her own death and the outcome. That is heartbreaking.
It is. She knew who he was, she knew his temper, and she knew his influence. And that brings us to June 1994, Section 3, the murders.
June 12, 1994, a Sunday night in Brentwood, Los Angeles.
Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ron Goldman were found stabbed to death outside her condo.
We should clarify about Ron Goldman because early on there were all these disgusting rumors of an affair, but he was just there doing a favor, right? He was just the good guy.
Correct. He was a waiter at Mezzaluna, a restaurant where Nicole had eaten dinner that night. Her mother had accidentally left her sunglasses behind. Ron offered to drop them off at Nicole's house after his shift.
Wrong place, wrong time.
In the worst possible way. He walked into a slaughter. The brutality of the crime scene was shocking. Simpson became the immediate person of interest. He had the motive, he had the history of violence, and he had no alibi for the time of the murders.
But here is a detail that I honestly had forgotten, or maybe never knew. It's one of those surprising facts we promised. At the time of the murders, what was O.J. doing professionally?
This is bizarre. He was filming a pilot for NBC, a show called Frogmen.
Frogmen, like Navy SEALs.
Exactly. It was an action show, kind of like the A-Team. O.J. played the leader of a group of former SEALs who worked out of a surf shop in Malibu.
Okay, so he's playing an action hero.
But here is the eerie detail. For that role, Simpson received military-style knife training.
You are kidding me.
I am not. He was trained in how to use a knife for stealth kills. And there was a scene filmed for the pilot, a scene that actually exists where Simpson's character grabs a woman, holds a knife to her throat, and threatens her.
And this was never aired.
NBC buried it immediately after the murders. The police actually seized the footage as part of the investigation to see if it showed a level of comfort with knives. It wasn't introduced at trial, but just imagine the existence of that footage while he's on trial for a double stabbing.
That is deeply unsettling. It blurs the line between the actor and the reality. So the murders happen, the police focus on O.J., they arrange for him to surrender on June 17th.
His lawyers, led by Robert Shapiro, say he will turn himself in. The police are waiting, the media is waiting, and he doesn't show.
He goes on the run, and we get the Bronco chase.
The white Ford Bronco. Driven by his best friend and former teammate Al Cowlings, O.J. is in the backseat.
It's hard to overstate how big this moment was. This wasn't just news, this was everything.
It interrupted the NBA Finals. Think about that. The Knicks and the Rockets are playing for a championship, a huge national event, and NBC cuts away to show a white SUV driving 35 miles an hour down the 405 freeway.
95 million viewers tuned in.
95 million. It was a shared cultural moment. Domino's Pizza reported record sales that night because nobody wanted to cook. They were glued to the TV.
People were standing on overpasses with signs cheering him on, "Go, O.J."
Which is bizarre because inside that car, it wasn't a victory lap. It was a funeral procession.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Simpson had a gun to his head. He was threatening suicide. He was crying. Al Cowlings was on the phone with 911 screaming, "He's got a gun to his head. Back off."
And Robert Kardashian, his friend and lawyer, was reading that letter on TV.
The suicide note. "Don't feel sorry for me. I've had a great life."
It really solidified the feeling for many people watching that this was the end. They thought they were watching a man drive to his death. But he didn't die. He surrendered at his Brentwood estate. The police took him in, and that set the stage for Section 4, the trial of the century.
The criminal trial. The people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson. This is where the American legal system and American media culture collided in a way that changed everything.
We had the dream team for the defense. I mean, what a lineup.
Johnny Cochran, Robert Shapiro, F. Lee Bailey, Alan Dershowitz, Robert Kardashian. These are the titans of the legal world. They were charismatic, they were aggressive,
Right.
and they were very, very expensive.
And for the prosecution, Marcia Clark and Christopher Darden.
The prosecution felt they had a slam dunk case.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at what they had. They had the DNA evidence putting Simpson at the scene. They had the victim's blood in Simpson's Bronco.
Right.
They had the victim's blood on Simpson's socks found in his bedroom. And they had the glove.
The glove. One found at the murder scene, one found at Simpson's estate by Detective Mark Furman. It seems overwhelming.
It does. But the defense.
Yeah.
The defense was masterful at dismantling the narrative. Their strategy wasn't necessarily to prove O.J. was innocent. It was to prove the investigation was flawed. They just needed to create reasonable doubt.
And the glove became the symbol of that doubt.
The Christopher Darden decision to have Simpson try on the gloves in court, it is widely considered one of the biggest blunders in prosecutorial history.
I remember the footage so clearly. O.J. is standing there. He's putting on these latex gloves first, then he's tugging at the leather ones. He's grimacing. He holds his hands up to the jury like, look, they don't fit.
And Johnny Cochran, in his closing argument, delivers the line that lived forever. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
It's poetry. It's so simple and memorable, but let's be real for a second. Why didn't they fit?
Scientifically, there are good reasons. The gloves were leather. They had been soaked in blood. They had been frozen and thawed for testing. Leather shrinks when it gets wet and dries.
Okay, that makes sense.
Plus, as you said, Simpson was wearing latex gloves underneath them to preserve the evidence. And the prosecution argued that Simpson had stopped taking his arthritis medication, which caused his hands to swell.
So there were logical explanations, but in a televised trial...
Logic doesn't always win. Visuals win. The jury saw a man who couldn't put on the murderer's gloves. It looked like a frame-up.
But the real turning point wasn't the glove, was it? It was the Furman tapes.
This is where the trial pivoted. The defense made the argument that the LAPD was corrupt and racist, and therefore they might have planted the evidence. It was a bold strategy.
And they centered that strategy on Detective Mark Furman, who found the glove on O.J.'s property.
Exactly. On the stand, Furman testified under oath that he hadn't used the N-word in the last 10 years. He presented himself as a clean cop, just doing his job.
He was lying.
He was lying. The defense found tapes audio recordings from a screenwriter named Laura McKinney, who had interviewed Furman for a project about the LAPD.
And on those tapes?
In those tapes, Furman uses the N-word dozens of times. He boasts about police brutality. He talks about planting evidence to get convictions. It was a complete and total bombshell.
It destroyed his credibility on the stand.
Utterly. And suddenly, the defense could argue, if this guy is a racist and a liar, maybe he did plant the glove. Maybe he smeared the blood on the Bronco. It introduced that sliver of doubt they needed.
And you have to consider the context of Los Angeles in 1995. This isn't happening in a vacuum.
Yeah, absolutely. This is post-Rodney King. The video of Rodney King being beaten by police and the subsequent acquittal of those officers had sparked the LA riots just a few years earlier in '92. The trust between the black community and the LAPD was non-existent.
So for the jury, which had a majority of black members, the idea of a police frame-up wasn't a wild conspiracy theory. It was a lived reality for many.
Exactly. Johnny Cochran tapped into that history. He made the trial about something bigger than O.J. He made it about the system. He famously told the jury, "You are the conscience of this community."
So when the verdict came down on October 3rd, 1995, not guilty.
Acquitted on all counts. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours.
4 hours for a trial that lasted almost a year. That implies they didn't even really debate the evidence. They had made up their minds.
It stunned the nation. And the reaction. Talk about a divided country. You saw the split screen on the news. Black audiences in classrooms and offices largely celebrating, cheering. White audiences staring in shock, crying.
And that reaction wasn't just about O.J., was it?
No. The sources analyzed this deeply. For many Black Americans, the celebration wasn't necessarily because they thought O.J. was a saint or innocent. It was a victory against a corrupt system. It was the first time a rich, famous, Black defendant beat the system that usually crushed them. It was about power.
Whereas white Americans just saw a murderer walking free because he could afford the best lawyers.
It revealed a racial fault line in America that we are still dealing with. It changed everything. It birthed modern reality TV. The Kardashians are literally part of this story because of Robert Kardashian. It changed how we look at DNA. It changed how we talk about domestic violence. It was a cultural earthquake.
It did. But while O.J. walked free from the criminal court, he wasn't done with the legal system. And this leads us to Section 5, the civil trial.
Right, because the families of Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman didn't give up. The Goldman family, in particular, was relentless. They sued him for wrongful death.
How is a civil trial different? Why did they think they could win when the prosecutors, with all the resources of the state, failed?
Two main reasons. First, the burden of proof is much lower. In criminal court, you need beyond a reasonable doubt. That's like 99% certainty.
Right.
In civil court, you just need a preponderance of the evidence. Is it more likely than not that he did it? So 51%, a much lower bar to clear.
And the second reason?
O.J. had to testify. In the criminal trial, he exercised his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. He never took the stand. In the civil trial, you don't have that option in the same way. He had to take the stand, and he did not do well. The plaintiff's lawyers tore him apart.
I remember seeing clips of that. The infamous Bruno Magli shoes.
Yes. The bloody shoe prints at the scene were from a rare, expensive brand of Bruno Magli shoes. O.J. swore under oath he'd never owned such ugly-ass shoes. Then the plaintiffs produced 30 photos of him wearing those exact shoes at football games and other events.
Oof, that's a bad look. So the verdict in 1997.
The jury found him liable for the deaths. They ordered him to pay $33.5 million in damages.
That's a massive number. Did he pay it?
He paid very little of it. He lost his Brentwood home. His Heisman Trophy was auctioned off. But he was smart about protecting his assets. He moved to Florida.
Why Florida?
Florida has very strong homestead laws. They protect your primary residence from being seized in bankruptcy or civil judgments. And crucially, they couldn't touch his NFL pension, which paid him about $25,000 a month.
So he's legally broke and owes millions, but he's living in a gated community in Florida playing golf every day.
Precisely. And you can imagine how infuriating that was for the Goldman family. They spent the next 30 years chasing every dime he made.
That is frustrating, to say the least. But then things get really bizarre. In 2006, O.J. decides to participate in a book project.
If I did it.
I still can't believe this was real. He writes a book, or has it ghostwritten by Pablo Fendes, describing hypothetically how he would have committed the murders.
It is one of the most ill-conceived, narcissistic, and just plain weird PR moves in history. He claimed he was doing it for his kids, that it was blood money for them. The public outcry was so intense that the publisher, Regan Books, a division of HarperCollins, canceled the release. Judith Regan, the publisher, actually lost her job and her TV show over it.
But then, in a twist of legal irony, the Goldman family stepped in.
They sued for the rights to the book. They argued that the manuscript was an asset, and since O.J. owed them millions, they should own the asset. It was a brilliant legal move.
And the court agreed.
So the Goldmans owned the book about their son's murder, written by the man they believe killed him, and they decided to publish it.
But they changed the cover.
This is brilliant. The title is If I Did It, but on the cover, the word if is tiny. It's almost invisible, hidden inside the letter I. So when you look at the book on a shelf, it just reads, I did IT. Confessions of the Killer.
That is next level petty, and I respect it. And the content of the book. Does he confess?
Not explicitly. He describes a hypothetical accomplice he calls Charlie. He describes going to the house. He describes a confrontation. But then, right when the violence starts, he writes that he blacked out.
Blacked out. Convenient.
Very. But the details leading up to the blackout, the descriptions of the dog, the layout of the condo, the arguments are so specific that many people view it as a thinly veiled confession.
So he's publicly shamed, he's financially squeezed, but he's free. Until Las Vegas. Section 6, The Fall.
2007. This is the moment where karma or fate or just plain bad judgment finally caught up with him.
What happened in Vegas?
Simpson found out that some sports memorabilia dealers were selling items that he claimed belonged to him. Personal photos, his Hall of Fame certificate, things he said were stolen from him years ago.
So he decided to take them back.
But he didn't call the police. He didn't call a lawyer. He rounded up a posse of guys, some he barely knew, and stormed into a hotel room at the Palace Station Hotel to confront them.
And the kicker, They brought guns.
Simpson denied bringing the guns or knowing about them, but the audio recording, because one of the guys in the room was secretly recording the whole thing, caught Simpson shouting orders, "Don't let nobody out of this room." And two of the men with him had handguns.
He was charged with armed robbery and kidnapping.
Kidnapping seems extreme, but under Nevada law, if you confine someone against their will, even for a short time during the commission of another felony, it can be kidnapping.
So the trial happens in 2008.
And on October 3rd, 2008, exactly 13 years to the day after his acquittal in the murder trial, he was found guilty on all charges.
That timing is script-worthy. You couldn't make that up.
It feels like the universe balancing the scales, and the sentence was heavy. The judge, Jackie Glass, sentenced him to 33 years in prison.
33 years for stealing some memorabilia.
Many people, including legal experts cited in our sources, felt this was payback for 1995. The judge denied it, of course. She said it was about the violence and the guns. But a 33-year sentence for a robbery where no one was seriously hurt and he was retrieving his own property, it felt like the justice system was finally getting its pound of flesh.
So he goes to prison, Lovelock Correctional Center in Nevada. What was his life like there?
He was inmate, #1027-820. By all accounts, he was a model prisoner. He worked as a gym janitor, wiping down equipment. He coached the prison softball teams. He served 9 years before being granted parole in 2017.
So he gets out. He's an old man now. Section 7. The final years.
He moved to a gated community in Las Vegas, near a golf course. And strangely, he became active on Twitter.
I remember this. He posted that first video. "Hello, Twitter world. This is yours truly." It was so bizarre.
It was surreal. He would just post these short videos giving his takes on fantasy football or politics. It was like he was trying to reclaim that juice persona, acting like the lovable, charming uncle again. But every time he posted, the comments were flooded with reminders of the murders. The shadow never, ever left him.
And there was speculation about his health, right? Specifically his brain.
Yes. CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, the brain disease caused by repeated head trauma, common in football players. Dr. Bennett Omalu, the doctor who discovered CTE and was the subject of the movie Concussion, said he would bet his medical license that O.J. had it.
I mean, a running back in the 70s, he took thousands of hits to the head.
And the helmets back then were nothing like they are today. Simpson even suspected it himself. He talked about memory loss and erratic behavior. We know that CTE can cause aggression, poor impulse control, depression.
It doesn't excuse murder, obviously.
No, absolutely not. But it adds another layer to the tragedy. It raises the question: how much of his behavior was the man, and how much was the damage from the game that made him famous? But we will never know for sure. After he died, his family refused to have his brain studied.
He died in April 2024, prostate cancer.
He was 76. He died surrounded by his children and grandchildren.
And there were reports that everyone had to sign NDAs to visit him at the end.
That was the report. Even in death, there was this layer of legal secrecy and protection. The control was there until the very end.
And the reaction to his death?
Yeah.
It was telling.
Silence. The NFL released no official statement. The Buffalo Bills, the 49ers, USC, the institutions that built their history on his back, they said nothing. The Heisman Trust put out a small statement, but the teams that made him, nothing.
They just wanted it to go away.
They did. But the Goldman family released a statement that I think sums it up perfectly. They said, the hope for true accountability has ended.
Powerful. Because for them, it was never really over.
They acknowledged that even with the civil judgment, justice was never really served in their eyes. The money was never fully paid with interest. The debt had ballooned to over $100 million. The confession never came.
So what does this all mean? We're at the outro now. How do we sum up a life like O.J. Simpson?
It's a tragedy of Shakespearean proportions. You have the rise from poverty and leg braces to the absolute pinnacle of American success, the colorless icon who was loved by everyone, and then the descent into violence, the racial polarization of the trial, and the bizarre, pathetic end in a Vegas prison and a Twitter account.
He went from being a symbol of limitless potential to a symbol of division and domestic abuse.
Exactly. And there's a final thought from the source material that really stuck with me. In his hometown of San Francisco, there was a mural in the Potrero Hill projects that featured him in his 49ers uniform.
A hometown hero.
But over the years, after the trial, people kept vandalizing it. They painted devil horns on him. They threw paint at it. And eventually, the city just painted him out of the mural entirely. They replaced him with someone else. And that raises the question for all of us. When a legacy is this tarnished, does the greatness of the athletic achievement disappear? Can you separate the 2,000 yards from the double murder? Or does the crime become the ink that blacks out everything else?
That is a question I think we'll be debating for a very long time.
Indeed.
Before we go, I want to encourage you to look up one thing. Google the book cover for If I Did It, the one published by the Goldman family. Look at how they hid the word if. It is a masterclass in visual storytelling and a final defiant act by a grieving family.
It really is a powerful piece of design.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.